Alright, so in this second lesson, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of the concepts that we introduced really quickly in the last lesson, and sort of go over and look at the program that we wrote back there a little more carefully, and kind of go through line by line and see what everything does, and see if we can get a better understanding of how C programs are structured. And from there, we're going to move to some of the basic concepts like functions and variables, and sort of basic operations we can perform on those two things. So let's get started. So like we were looking at before, we'll start here with our Preprocessor Directive. That's the include line up at the top here, where we include our standard IO header. That's the .h file. And then we can get into the rest of our code. So in addition to Preprocessor directives like we talked about last time, we basically declared the main function, and a function is just a collection of code that our C program will run. The main function, as we talked about last time, is the entry point. It's the first thing that gets run when your application is run. But you can also define other functions that you call from within the main function, and they can have different return types, like you see here. We declared this function with int, and that's basically a data type that this function is set to return. So as you can see here, we return 0, and that's, like we talked about, basically a code that tells the operating system that nothing went wrong. And these statements are simply the commands that we're calling. This one command, this is a call to the print function, which is going to print out some text at the screen like we saw last time. And just some basic things about the syntax to go over. In C, we end any one particular statement with a semicolon. There are some exceptions, like we have our function here, which does not have a semicolon at the end because our code's in here. But basically, when we're calling functions, writing one statements, declaring variables, we're going to end them with a semicolon. So now that we've gone over that, let's look into declaring variables and the different data types that are associated with them. So to look into variables and data types, let's start by creating a new program where we're going to look at those things. So we can basically start it off the same way. We'll include standard IO so we can print things out to the screen. Then we'll start with another main function. So now, if you're familiar with some of the basic concepts of programming, we have different data types that we assign to variables. This basically just specifies what kind of information we can hold in a particular variable. So as you can see, we talked about a little earlier, our main function has a return type of integer. These are basically whole numbers. Same as mathematics, we have different data types for floating point numbers, numbers with decimal information, data types for characters, collections of characters. So first, let's declare some integer variables and see what we can do with them. Much like how we have our int main there, we can declare an integer variable with int. And we can assign it to a value just like that, setting it equal to whatever number we want. So let's create two variables and add them together and see the result in our program. So now that we've created our two variables, we're going to want to print the result of adding these two together out to the screen if that's what we want to do. So we can use the Printf function, but that function normally just takes strings or lists of characters as an argument. So in order to print them out to the screen, we're going to need to use some formatting. We can basically specify an identifier like this to indicate to Printf that we want it to print out an integer, which is the data type that we're passing it. So we specify that, and then we pass the integer that we want it to print out. In this case, we'll have that be the result of our calculation. And we can actually call the function like that. And one other thing, we're going to add a new line so that this prints to our terminal on a new line. Alright, so you should be able to compile this program and have it print out the result of our integer calculations. So we can use make here and specify the name of our C program file, and then we can execute it like this. And as you can see, it's printed out the result of our integer calculation. So this is basically a way that we can declare data types in our program and we can operate on them. We can basically use all of the basic arithmetic operators. We can do multiplication, division, subtraction. We can do all these kinds of operations built into C on our data types. So let's look at another data type. So one other important data type that we're going to probably have to work with a lot are strings. Or in C, they're defined as list of characters. It's basically what the default argument to the Printf function is, and just sort of the data type for any sort of text that you're going to want to have in your C program. So let's take a look at how we can declare a string. So basically, we declare the type first. In this case, that's character. We declare it like this. If we want a string, and then we have the name of our variable. And then we use these array brackets because a character simply holds a single character value, and for a string we're going to want to be able to hold multiple of those. So we will basically have a list of characters that'll basically be like an array of characters, and so we can put our string data in here. We specify it like this. And now we can actually directly pass this particular variable to the printf function, since it is already a string. So basically that's how we declare a variable of type string, and we can compile this and run it as well. Let's also add a new line here. So we make our program 2 again, and then we run it. And it prints out our string variable. So basically, in C, unlike a lot of other programming languages you may have come in contact with, we have to declare the type of our variable before we declare the variable. So, and the format for doing that is what we've been looking at. First, you declare the variable type. In this case, we've looked at both int and char for character. And then you set a variable name. And then you have a variable that you can use, you can perform calculations with, you can do anything with it. So that's basically the basics of how to declare variables in C. And soon in the next lesson we're going to look at some other data types that we can use and some things that we can do with them.